Hello, welcome to another episode of Aranca Insights. Today we have with us Avinash. Avinash has more than a decades of experience working in digital and technology strategy in the aviation and manufacturing sectors. So, welcome Avinash, and why don't we start with a quick introduction about yourself?
Thank you for having me, and thanks for that introduction. So I started out as a metallurgist 10, 12 years back, and then spent about first 4.5 years doing mixed roles. So had a lot of experience in operations and manufacturing, and then I went on to do a little bit of stint on consulting as well in a boutique consulting firm, trying to understand how a strategy work is done, right? Subsequently, I moved on to Singapore to do my MBA, and then post MBA, I had an opportunity with one of the industrial conglomerates to work in the corporate strategy team. And I spent about roughly 5.5 years doing that. And the first 3 years of that stint was a lot of work on oil and gas, mining, cement, power, and fertilizer areas. And 3 years into that role, I had an opportunity to incubate a digital center for this company in Singapore and also in India. And that happened to be my first sort of getting hands dirty into the digital transformation. And subsequently, after 2 years, I moved back to India around 2021, June. Took up a role with another industrial conglomerate to lead a digital transformation for them for one of their businesses in Mumbai. Spent about 3 years doing that. And the whole experience was all around concept to commissioning of digital transformation and going through the whole transformation for them, understanding the challenges in change management and how to kick in the adoption. How do you measure success? How do you measure failure? And how do you calibrate your program in regular instances? And how do you sort of understand how a technology change is supposed to be managed? And after that, I now moved here into an aviation aerospace company and doing strategy work, transformation in the digital practice for this company.
Great, great. So, Avinash, to start from the top, how do you see digital transformation changing the global aviation industry in the next 5 to 10 years?
So if you look at, so when you look at aviation, there are two packs to this, right? So the first one is the airlines, and the other one is the airports, the infrastructure associated with it. So when I take the airlines, so besides your enterprise systems, namely your ERPs, CRMs, and all the success factors or things that go into people management activities, there are certain areas which are very core to the aviation airlines, which is the lifeline of the airline to run, right? So, for example, a passenger management system, uh, a crew management system. So, this is the heart and soul of an airline. So, right from a passenger booking, the whole crew operations management, and how do a boarding pass get issued, your baggage management, and subsequently the communication connected with the aircraft and the airlines and the ground staff, and also the whole route to optimization planning and all of this, right? It's called the operation control center. So this is the heart of every airline, and that has a lot of software associated to do these kind of activities. And when you look at how the trend is evolving, so the aviation and aerospace has always been at the forefront of digital adoption, technology adoption, simply because the whole idea is about how do you enhance competitiveness by technology adoption. But as a sector, if you see, it's always faced with headwinds. So you have macroeconomic sensitivities that hits the sector. COVID happens, it hits the sector. Then you also have a lot of challenges on operating your cost, right? So it's a lot to do with cost. Everything that you talk about aviation is centered around cost. And of course, you have a lot of customer experience that you have to manage, the demand and the changing technology landscape in this particular area. So technology is actually solving all of this in different ways. So I can give you some examples here, right? So first and foremost is if you talk about, let's say, an analytics or data science, you have a lot of activities connected with pricing that goes into booking tickets. And then you also have a lot of, I would say, personalization coming into play when you're booking your tickets online in a travel commerce site versus an airline website. And a lot of integration happens with the way you use, the way you pay, and the way you process the information. And all this goes into how we can personalize offers and make it the best for you, right? Subsequently, at the airports, you also have a lot of technology coming into play right from the QR code scanning when you enter the airport, right? The, and the security checks, and then finally the entire boarding. There's a lot of analytics also playing in there to understand the time it takes for you to enter and move to a boarding section. Where is your maximum time spent, and how can we optimize the time you spend in an airport and make it the best experience for you. Likewise, on the cost side, you have a lot of initiatives similarly. So a lot of AI is at play, IoT is at play for you, which you perhaps sometimes see it and sometimes you don't see it, right? So, but it is all the bread and butter and running of the airline. So technology is being adopted in different ways, right? AI is also very widely, leveraged uh, by these two sectors, and then you will also see any technology that kicks in. One of the first industries to pick up and experiment would be the aviation aerospace, simply because you're working with customers and you are constantly in pressure to cut costs, and you have to create the best experience for them, keeping these challenges intact, right?
Right.
So therefore, aviation technology in the next 5 to 10 years will constantly evolve with the way the trends outside are evolving. The adoption will obviously kick in, and you will see uh, it is on top of the game as and when there is a change.
Yeah. So how is AI, IoT, and biometrics utilized by the aviation industry, for example, to improve the passenger experience at the airport and when they onboard the aircraft?
So the passenger experience, so AI, IoT, I can think of top of mind one or two use cases. So the first thing we talked about was the pricing, right? So right from the booking, a lot of uh, you know understanding goes into picture to put your pricing at the time when you're checking, right? uh, the time that you're surfing, where you're surfing, the demand, the search volume, so many things go into play into identifying the best pricing that you can deploy. The second piece is a lot to do with the whole connectivity. So I'm not even going into the AI right away, right? So the IoT we talked about. The connectivity for you as a passenger is when you come to the airport first, how are you interacting? And then you're going to a boarding section where your boarding pass gets issued. How do you interact there? You have a luggage that you are dropping in, right? Everything that has got to do with the interaction with the airline at these various checkpoints has a technology interface there. A simple thing is, let's say I'm just sharing this off the shelf, which is, let's say you're boarding and you don't have a loyalty program with any airline, right? For example, and you're just an average consumer who's just passing by, but you're probably a frequent traveler who doesn't have a loyalty program with any airline simply because you keep shifting depending on the price. But let's say when you board, at the time of boarding, your face gets recorded. Your At the time of boarding, most airports today it is recorded, right? So I can actually create a pattern using this, if it's possible, to devise a loyalty program for you, to understand how many times you're, you know, frequenting, flying, and then I can customize my value offerings to you. So a lot of personalization can happen that way with the AI, IoT, computer vision. And we spoke about the aircraft, the flying and all of that. So there's a lot of possibility that you can think of when it comes to route optimization, right? So and there is a lot of times in aviation, the key thing for a successful airline is the utilization of the aircraft. So it can come very handy to you to understand well in advance the weather patterns, the wind movements, the traffic at an airport A and a target airport, and then you can plan the schedule of the flights, right? And then you could use that aircraft. For example, let's say I'm moving the aircraft from Bangalore to Delhi, then I could probably move that aircraft depending on the conditions and parameters that I mentioned. I could move it to a Calcutta or a Guwahati depending on where the best route I can look at. So AI optimization, a lot of things goes into this. So therefore, customer experience also has an impact to this. So if I am able to give the aircraft right on time to the customer's time is saved, and he gets to the point where he's supposed to get to at the right time. So this is how technology is, helping the aviation.
Absolutely. And as they say, I mean, if you can't see the technology but can see the benefits, then
Correct.
it's the best use case.
Yeah.
We talk a lot of times about sustainability, and we talk about reduction in emissions. And I
Yeah.
think that is something which is very core to the airline industry. Um, so, how do you see digital tools and techniques helping with meeting the sustainability goals of different organizations, especially manufacturing?
So manufacturing industry has the vast, I would say, uh, use cases possible in sustainability. The simplest thing that comes top of mind is the energy consumption, right? So when you take industrial companies like cement, mining, the much of the consumption at an operating expense level, at least 40% to 45% of that cost minimum, right? We're talking of goes into power and energy consumption. So anything that goes into measuring this at regular intervals, understanding the utilization of machines, the vibration patterns of the machines to make sure that you get the right throughput every time, right? This becomes very paramount for a lot of industrial companies. The second thing is another simple use case you can always think of is at a very factory level, you can actually look at your energy consumption and you can look at machines which are high consuming areas, areas which are not so high consuming, and what are some energy efficiency measures you can play, both at an industrial automation control level and also at the mechanical vibration level for the machines to make sure that your energy is optimized. So digital first thing it enables is measuring the energy. It gives you an indication on where we must act, right? And then it also facilitates reporting for you if you want to do a sustainability reporting as part of any regulation requirements. The second piece is a simple use case I can definitely think of is the QR code, right? So a QR code is ubiquitous now. It's everywhere. And in fact, there are so many possibilities that are emerging with QR code. A simple thing is, again, from a raw material to finished goods, raw material in process to finished goods, and then dispatch and then delivery to a customer. I can track this through a QR code mechanism. And what information I enter across the value chain essentially governs what analysis I can do subsequently. The simplest example I can give you is, that I can also start measuring the energy that I can, that I'm leveraging at every stage of my manufacturing process. I can look at the carbon emissions during my logistics. That can give me a sense of how much of carbon that I'm actually, expelling into the atmosphere when I'm delivering my goods, right? And I can look to find ways to maybe deploy EV vehicles. I can do, some energy efficiency measures, pollution controlling measures, and all of that. So the QR code traceability also helps you there. And the third piece I would say is a lot to do with vehicle telematics, right? So a lot of vehicle telematics can actually help you understand, especially in the logistics and supply chain, how do you actually choose the best route? How can you ensure that there is no overspeeding and your engines are actually operated in the right optimized manner? All of this is possible today. So all of this indirectly adds into sustainability for you as a manufacturing company. But the biggest sort of lever you're playing on with all these technologies is not just sustainability, but at the overall operating cost level. So it gives you substantial, savings in terms of operating expenditures, and definitely gives you avenues to explore on how best you can be a sustainable company with this.
Right.
Yeah. And how is the digital evolving differently for the low cost airlines as compared to the legacy carriers?
See, it is actually aviation has been at the forefront of technology adoption, right? And some of them is partly driven by regulation, some of them has been driven by the need of the hour, right? So today, at least in the context of India and large part of developed countries, I think the technology adoption has been fairly, I would say, at similar levels, whether you take a low cost, legacy, full service carrier, right? And these companies are learning from each other. And let's say if you have, because aviation, you have very few players typically, right? So let's say one does it, the other one will automatically do it because you have to make sure that you're competitive. So the only thing is that I think in terms of the challenges that you're addressing at an operating level could perhaps vary, right? Because at a low cost, for a low cost airline, it's always about how you make sure that the turnaround time is maintained, and then you deliver the right pricing, and then you make sure that you create not many hassles for the customers to make sure that they reach their destination safely.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, for a full service carrier, a priority could be delivering more experience based, right? So you have more entertainment, you have food and all of that coming along the way, the launch access, all of this. So therefore, the interfaces, checkpoints that you have to tap to put a technology, sort of a use case into this could vary for a full service versus a low cost airline.
Mm-hmm.
But fundamentally, right, when you look at how both adopt technology, they are quite similar. So it doesn't, and because you are the field is such that unless you do it, the competitiveness is going to get hampered. So you have to do it fast.
Can you talk about the concept of Industry 4.0 and how the manufacturing industry is leveraging that concept?
Right. So Industry 4.0 is essentially, in some form and shape has been in existence in manufacturing since many years. Right. So I'll just take you down the lane. Right. So the programmable logical controllers is where it all began. Right. So where instead of a machine being manually run, it is automated through a computer program, which has an industrial PLC controller that is operating this machine through a software program. Subsequently, in the 80s and 90s, you had, the SCADA systems coming over, right, where people could actually pull the data from this machine through the logs and generate reports on the operating performance of the machine. And then subsequently, manufacturing execution systems, excellence systems came into play, and then you could actually sort of realize in every plant, you could actually realize at a machine level, I could understand what's my unit level time to produce, what are the ingredients that are going, and then what's the labor that is being deployed to make sure that the input is converted into output. All of this could be tracked. And then came the cloud and the whole digital era in the 2000 and the early 2010, 2011. When the cloud happened, actually, it was essentially connecting this whole thing that I just talked about, right, into the cloud. The whole the operations, the data that you were generating, which was remotely sitting in a server in a factory, you were able to connect it to a cloud, right? So, and at an enterprise level, you're also able to tap this data and connect it to your enterprise systems, and then you're able to view a lot of reports. So this is how the journey of digital transformation happened in manufacturing in some sense. Now top it up with more, connecting points. So earlier factory was perhaps connected only at a machine. So now I'm connecting a worker touch point. I'm putting in with helmets, and then I'm putting more cameras. I'm putting more computer vision in my quality inspection areas. I'm connecting as many test benches as possible from my quality inspection areas into cloud, and I'm generating the possibility of having a huge variety of data. Right? So with all this comes the whole Industry 4.0 transformation, which is new technologies coming in, and how do you marry the old and the new, and making sure that you have the right insights to make sure that the right actions are taken. Parallelly, you're also having a possibility to automate the machines. You also have possibilities to have a factory which is running without manpower, right? All of this supreme automation possibilities have also happened. And when you look at some of the established industrial automation companies in the market today, they all have robotics, which has been in the business. So they have cobots where they can work together along with humans, to make sure that a production is made possible in a factory. So Industry 4.0 is not new to the manufacturing. Essentially, that is what I'm trying to say. And the only thing is the possibility is enhanced with the coming of all the new digital technologies, with the advent of more computing power, more data coming in. How best can you leverage it, and what best you can do with it? So simple thing is, in quality inspection area, I can put up computer vision, camera-based inspections to carry out my surface inspections. I can put cameras to have remote inspections being conducted. Then I can have cameras to monitor my machines. I can put sensors, vibration sensors in my machines to understand whether my machine is going to fail or not. I can predict. So these possibilities have emerged, right? So which is where the shift is happening, right? So many a times there is a general sense that manufacturing is a late adopter of technology, but it is never the case. It has been at the forefront. The adoption has been happening. It's just that a lot of action, people talking, is happening more in the coming, you know, days. But definitely, Industry 4.0 has huge possibilities, and it can contribute in delivering superior customer experience, having low cost operations, and preparing your workforce for future of work. So all these three possibilities exist.
Yeah. So for Avinash, for in terms of innovation, what would be your advice for the startups or the research institutes? Those are innovating for the aviation industry. What would be your advice?
So I think aviation is always uh, a very challenging space. Right? So you are working with a lot of macro headwinds, like I said. Cost of operations, operating cost model is very important, right? So anything that goes into cutting cost is the primary focus that has to be, right? And a lot of times you will see uh, the the software that it runs on is largely not a very, I would say, it's a very costly affair, right, to run, manage, execute software. Having low cost options is one area, right, that startups can explore. Wherefore, let's say some of the lifeline of the airline that we talked about, startups having some space here is very important to look at. Because fundamentally, as you will see in the coming years, aviation, at least in India, will become more and more of low cost affair. So you will have regional carriers coming in, and then the space could be densely, populated, because the demand environment looks favorable today. So let's say if it sustains and if the policy environment looks attractive, then you will have a very big scale to operate. I mean, also if infrastructure is addressed. So at that point in time, for a lot of the players, the focus would be all around how do I make sure that I have the best cost operating model. It's not just in operations, but also in the technology that we work on. So therefore, having low cost alternatives will always be a very key to look at. And the last thing is, of course, customer experience, because you are on a day to day basis modeling with a lot of challenges, right? So you have to handle a lot of complaints from customers in various areas, from baggage loss to damage to baggages, to not having the right information to, to a flight that they are boarding, when there is a change of boarding gate or when there is a change of time, right? Simple things that we might be thinking that, where customer experience really matters. Having them delivered is very important. The last thing to look at is also anything to do with time, right? It's also tied to customer experience. How can you best optimize, reduce the time for a customer? A simple thing is, you have to perhaps prepare 2 hours in advance to be at the airport today to board your flight. Can I cut it down? Right. So you have some, step forward in that direction. So today in India, you have DigiYatra. You can just walk in. You don't have to stand in the security queue when you're entering the airport. And the boarding is also being made. When you're checking in the boarding pass, some automation has happened there, right? Likewise, for your baggage drop, it's also happening gradually. So it's all about how do you optimize the time, and there's a huge opportunity to work on these areas. So net, I think we are looking at customer experience, turnaround time, having a low cost operating model, and anything to do with predicting any uncertainties, disruption management, right? So if you have a CrowdStrike like event, at any point in time, how do you handle a situation, right? So that your operations are not impacted. I think these are some things that, aviation would be really keen to look at least from my perspective.
Thanks a lot, Avinash, for your time today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.